I want to welcome our Seven Habits Celebrity guests. We got Julie Larkin from Franklin Covey. And Julie, you're in the higher education division, right? I think still.
That's
and
right.
These are all higher education people. So these are your people, right? And we get to talk to you. And thank you for being able to come and join us here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I am going to find my little cheat sheet here while we're talking, and I gotta stop sharing. I wasn't prepared for that. Okay, so Julie, I got my little cheat notes here and stuff, but you've done this before, right? So and it's good to have you back. I probably haven't seen you for a year or so.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago that we did this.
Yeah. So it's time for us to catch up a little bit, but maybe to help the students out and things. Seven Habits Higher Education. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what your job is and what it is you do to kind of get everybody oriented. And by the way, Julie, too, I'm gonna set a timer. And I'm gonna try to shoot for no more than 30 minutes on this. But let's have a chat.
Yeah. Well, I'm in higher education, as we just covered. I am what's called a business development partner. So we just work in getting this content out to higher education. So I support some client partners in doing that. We also present at conferences. We were just at the freshman year experience conference last week in Los Angeles, and just doing breakout sessions about our different content. Franklin Covey has a lot of content. You are all engaged in the cornerstone, really, of Franklin Covey, which is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So, in this portion, the highly effective college students. So that's a little bit about what I've been with Franklin Covey for a long time. So in a lot of different roles, and but always within the higher education division.
So tell us a little bit about the freshman experience. Is that sort of a new initiative for you guys? Because these guys are, there's a mix of folks from different areas, and maybe what you could do is, if you could in the chat, go ahead and type in what your major is or your concentration. Just go ahead and type in the chat so Julie can kind of see, some of the things, and also type in the year.
The year you are. So
what is the freshman experience thing?
Right. So while you're typing, that's not a part of Franklin Covey. It's just a conference that we attend. A lot of conferences to get our content out there into the world. So the freshman year experience is an initiative most campuses have. In fact, I would love to know if any of you remember going through FYE or freshman year course. It's called different things on different campuses. Sometimes it's called first year experience. I see some head nods. So a lot of first year experience, freshman year experience use our content. So that's why we're at the conference. So that's not something of Franklin Covey's. We're just there to say, hey, we have this great content, 7 habits, and some other things that you might want to incorporate into those courses.
That's kind of aspirational for me. I've brought this 7 habits of highly effective people to Cal Poly. Boy, probably now it's been like 3 or 5 years, that I've been sort of doing this kind of thing. And boy, it's such great information. And I think some of the students here now are sort of feeling, boy, I wish I had this while I was a freshman, as opposed to, more towards the senior side of things, right?
Right. And it's good at it's really great at any stage. And it's really, I think, beneficial that you're experiencing this before you graduate, because this is one of the most highly used content out in the corporate side of things. So Franklin Covey is one of the biggest in the world for professional development, leadership. So you're learning a lot of these concepts when you go into interviews, and you're saying things like big rocks, or what quadrant are you working in right now? What quadrant here's what I'm doing, and trying to stay in Q2, different lingo that you've probably learned or will learn. They're going to say, hey, wow, that's something that we do here. How impressive. You know that.
Yeah, I know what that is. Yeah.
Right.
So, I'd like to sort of follow up with the students, maybe get them in the conversation here a little bit. So do we have a freshman experience thing? It seems to me, I should pay more attention to that. I don't teach a lot of freshmen often. So what do we do here at Cal Poly? Anybody?
Well, I would say like I would kind of relate that to Wow Week potentially. Sorry, I know I'm not one of the students, but that's just the first thing that came to my mind. And then we also would do like the slow days experience also, where you come and stay at Cal Poly for 2 nights and get to kind of see what everything's about and learn a little bit about the campus and stuff.
Yeah, anybody else have like, what do we do as freshmen or something that is there a special sort of targeted experience or anything for us? Yeah, Anthea.
Yeah, it's not an overnight thing, but specifically in the College of Business, they have a OCOG Club showcase, usually like during WOW week or the week before school starts, and that's kind of a way for all the students to kind of explore all the concentration clubs and like try to speak to all of them so they can get like free goodies at the end. But it's just kind of a way for them to get integrated with the concentrations of college.
Cool, interesting. All right.
Yeah, at some schools, because we work with so many of these schools that use us for that. Some schools, like you said, it's a week-long, type of how to get organized, how to attack your freshman year, and so that you stay a student. In some of the schools, it's a semester-long course where they're actually using 7 Habits of Highly, effective college students for their course. So it can be wildly different.
Yeah, interesting. Lauren, you have a comment?
Yeah, my other thought after WOW, like Carly was, you can't hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay. My thought after Carly was saying WOW was Biz 100 or ITP 100 that all the freshmen take their first quarter, where you kind of get an introduction to college life, what is registration like, and some of those classes also go over like here's best practices as a college student.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very good. All right. So Julie, sorry for that little sort of diversion. I was sort of curious, about what we did and what that might look like. And I'm certainly interested in, maybe figuring out how to get more freshmen in this class and whatnot in particular. But so tell us a little bit, Julie, like how does somebody get to have your job? Like what was your education or your career journey? You said you worked for Franklin Covey for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I started out as a communications major. So I was one of those students, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I was sure I wanted to avoid math and science. That was kind of my goal. And so I thought communications sounded like a pretty well-rounded thing to do. So graduated with a communications degree, got into a sales job right away and thought, hey, maybe I'll want to go into education. My mom was a teacher. I grew up in the classroom helping her. So I went and got my teaching credential and started teaching 4th and 5th grade elementary school. And a little bit into that, kind of the pendulum swung back for me. And I thought, I love teaching, but I'm feeling pulled back towards the sales world. And, but I knew it had to be the right fit. It had to be something I could be passionate about, feel like did some good in the world, and so found Franklin Covey and thought, I love the content. I love what they're about. I love these 7 habits. And so I was hired by Franklin Covey and started my career in sales and business development and from there. So my first exposure to the 7 habits, they made us go to these, and I think they still have them. They're events like at it's a 2-day immersive 7 habits course at like a Marriott. And so we went through this they're called public courses, went through that extensive course. And I remember being so shocked. I thought I was going to a work training. I thought, oh, I'm gonna go learn how to do this job, learn these 7 habits, and it's gonna be a work thing. And I was shocked by how much it just took every part of your life and really talked about all the elements of your life fitting together and how these 7 habits will affect everything you do. So it was not at all about how to work better or how to learn this job. So that was really, really, it made a big impression right off the bat.
Yeah, nice foundational skills.
Right.
So that's good lead into the next question. So like, how do you apply the 7 habits in your jobs or kind of in your life, right? So I don't know how many years ago that that little trip to the Marriott was, and that sort of experience, but
Yeah,
um,
well, probably 25 years ago.
yeah, exactly. It's a
Yeah.
similar thing for me, as far as that goes, but how does that sort of, come up in your life or your day to day?
I will sound totally corny. I use it all the time. I have things written and posted in my bathroom by my mirror to remember my roles and to be excellent in my roles. And I'm a mother and a full-time working mother. And so I've had to remember to keep everything in perspective. I don't know if have your students gone through the big rocks
Oh, yeah.
yet? Yeah. Okay. So I'm a very visual person. That big rocks example always stuck with me. So I envision, whatever I have to do as a mom, whatever I have to do for my job, my church, my exercise is super important to me. So I will map those things out almost every day. I'll just start thinking about, when am I going to get my exercise in today? Because if you don't we used to put it in a paper planner. Not many of us use those anymore. But
Right.
if I don't put that down on my calendar, it's going to get lost. And it's so easy to say I was too busy. I didn't have time for this today. And I can't stand it when people say I didn't have time for that today. I'm like, you didn't make time for that today.
Yeah.
So of course life happens, and there's the gravel that you have to get through and do all that. But in my day to day, it is that visual of the big rocks and
Right.
putting first things first and knowing what those roles are so important to me and how am I going to accomplish what I need to each day in those big areas.
Well, like speaking of like, so one of the concepts that we're talking about, so the students are actually, so tonight they've done the reading on habit 5. So the seek first, understand, then be understood. So, all the sort of the win-win, and habit 3 is hopefully they're starting to master that, a little bit. But based on your experience, the promise was, well, if you do the big rocks and focus on quadrant 2, that, some of those other quadrants will, maybe minimize or things like that. Do you find that sort of be the case, or does that, and I guess the other sort of thing is, maybe being empathetic to your coworkers and things. Does it frustrate you that people aren't working on their big rocks? It frustrates me a little bit, right? That people don't know this concept, right?
Well, and that is one great thing about working for this company, because we know these habits and we have to live by them. We live and we do live by them. We don't really see an email come our way after 5 p.m. We really believe in that sharpen the saw, that's your time to work on whatever you need to work on in your personal life and just respecting that. And you mentioned one of my favorite and most important, or one of the most important, they're all important, but the seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah.
And I think that is something our culture drastically needs right now, with so much division and I call it living by headlines instead of really getting to know get a little granular, like what's going on there, that, I want to know a little bit more about that before I make a decision, and just treating others with respect when it's maybe a different concept than I'm living by. So I use that daily.
Yeah, so important. So I want to open this up to the students now at this point. So if you've got a question you want to ask Julie, feel free just to speak up, or you want to type something into the chat and then we can ask you to read it or to respond to it. But this is an opportunity to find out from somebody who's practicing what you guys are trying to learn, like maybe, what's that end state going to look like when they've integrate this into your life a little bit more. So.
And I'd really love to hear how you all are handling the gravel, we call it the gravel. So the big rocks, the gravel, I just think of this generation with just everything, with social media, with texting, with, all of that. It's just got to be a lot coming at you. I'd love to hear how you're keeping that in check and how you struggle with it and what you're trying to work on. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Big rocks is the right answer, but a lot of us are, you have to deal with the pebbles too at some point, I guess, right?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Looks like Lauren has her hand raised there.
Oh, okay. Hey, Lauren, what do you think?
For the I had a question too, but I can answer about the gravel first.
Yeah. Start with the gravel.
Probably how I handle. I don't feel like I have too much gravel because most of my life is school right now, and all those assignments are pretty well planned out, so they don't pop up too much. For everything else, it's kind of a matter of knowing where my priorities are and when I'm going to move stuff around and when I'm willing to push something to the weekend.
Yeah.
For my question, I was curious, when you have someone new joining the team at Franklin Covey, is it difficult to have like that adjustment of someone new who's new to the 7 Habits to start working with them, or is it a difficult adjustment for them at all?
That's a good question. A lot of times people come to work with us because they love this content and they've been a student of the content. So I don't see, and we all work from home. We all work from home too. So we see each other at conferences and, and kind of that in that regard. But I think more it's just when someone new comes on board, just helping them understand the culture that we go by and how we train and how we spend our time and how respectful we are of personal time and different things like that. But really, a lot of people know the content already, and that's why they've come to interview with us. So
Yeah.
It's rare that we get someone totally green in that sense. But they also go through an extensive 2-week training on everything too before I even meet them usually. So
Well, it's almost something like, probably, a lot of companies have maybe an aspiration to, publicly present sort of what they believe or what their values are as a company, right? And that becomes a sort of a self-selection bias for the people that, want to go work for that company. And, it's almost like Franklin Covey has that in spades, right?
Right. I get emails all
Go
the
read
time.
the book if you want to know what the company's like, or hopefully that's, the truth, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So I'm gonna kind of go around and ask, some of the folks on this call to kind of, jump in here. So Annie, what are your thoughts? What does this discussion make you think of?
For me, especially when we talk about like big rocks and like, people like coming into a new environment, I feel like for me personally, my big rocks are more like self, they're about myself. So, I feel like when I take care of myself, I'm able to take care of everything else around me. Like how you were talking about, blocking in time for exercise and self-care. I think for me, that is like the biggest thing I can do for everything around me. But as a freshman, I have a question about like what you would give to someone like who's like an incoming, like what is the best advice you could give to me right now? Because like, I don't know, I feel like very strange in like this new environment. Like I'm just trying to adjust to everything and it's so much,
Yeah. I would say you are definitely on the right track with what you said, though. I don't think many people realize how important that is. I just gave that presentation at that conference last week, and I was reading a quote how it's almost praised in our culture when you're not doing that. Right. So for example, someone will say, hey, I worked all weekend. I worked through the weekend, or, oh gosh, I only got 4 hours sleep last night because I was, grinding on this project. And, that shouldn't really be praised because you're going to burn out. If you keep that mentality, you're going to burn out. I mean, the facts are that sleep is important. It's when your brain recharges, when it grows, and exercise is important, eating right. We did a segment on caffeine, and I know you're all students, you probably drink a ton of coffee, but one of those energy drinks ended my son in the ER. He was preparing for a basketball game, and his brother said, "Oh, drink this energy drink, it'll really help you do well in your game." And we ended up in the ER. He almost missed his game. So these things are important. And I don't think, I think when you're in school, like you said, you're a student, you're working on your assignments, and don't be afraid to prioritize these things. Don't be afraid to, turn down something. I think that's another thing too, is learning to say no to some things and knowing your capacity and knowing, you're Annie, you said you're a freshman, I think, right? And
Yeah, I'm a freshman.
you're getting adjusted to a new schedule and a new life, and learning to maybe, before you were a freshman, you said yes to everything. Maybe you were in leadership or volunteer. We want to keep doing those things, but we want to make sure that we have the right balance, and otherwise you will burn out, and no one wants that. No one wants that. I mean, it sounds pretty simple, but I think it's something in our fast-paced culture that is sometimes not looked at in the right way. So that's how I hope that's helpful.
I think that's very helpful. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I like, I like the mentality that if we can instill this idea of making good choices, and just making good choices based on your values, and kind of, what was taking care of the goose, right? Another sort of, great concept, that balance between production and production capability is a way,
Right.
is a way to keep ourselves going.
Right.
Well, let's see. I'll tell you what, Julie, this has been sort of really good, and this is, a thing we've designed into this class to have, little snippets of real world people, who are applying this stuff, and it's good to have the students sort of see this as opposed to just either listening to me or reading a book, or even sort of beyond talking to each other about these concepts. But thank you so much for coming. Our last question, as always, is, so you got these impressionable young folks all the way from, freshmen like Annie to people that are going to go out and get a job in a few months. What would be your, best piece of advice that you can give them as they start, learning to apply the 7 habits?
Well, I think I go back to what I said, earlier, is just that all of the habits are great, seeking first to understand, then to be understood as you go out into the world. And just, even when you go out to go into interviews, just making sure about that company. What about the culture? Find out about the culture. Is it going to be a place that's going to be a right fit for me? And I think the culture is very important. So not just the job, not just the skills, but what's the culture like? Having those that research of who you're getting in front of, and then just sticking to those big rocks, and just really sticking to them. No matter, don't be pulled away. Stick to them. Hold on to them, and learn to say no to the right things. Say yes to the right things, and be steadfast in that. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Julie, thank you very much. Great advice. I'm going to ask everybody to send you off with a nice little wave. So if you can pop on your cameras, give Julie a wave as a thank you for doing this. This will be recorded on the video, that you've got, you actually snapped on your video and said thank you. So Julie, thank you so much. And we'll see you hopefully in a while.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to connect and see what the other side of what we do, the end result. So great to be on here and see all your smiling faces.
Okay, thanks, Julie.
Take care.